Hello, everybody, and happy March. If assuming, of course, you're looking at this at March, which is when I'm recording this. I hope you've got a nice, relatively spring day for you. Of course, then if you're in certain sections of California, you're buried under snow, and this too will pass. Is all I can say. Um, at least to give you water for the later on in the year. Let's look at it from a positive attitude, which is kind of where the quote is coming from today. What I'm talking about today is difficult and yet easy. And so much really depends on how you interpret it. And so this one came from Oprah. So even though I agree with it, maybe the fact that it came from Oprah will carry more weight than just plain old me, because you've probably known of Oprah longer than you have known of me. So anyway, here's the quote. Now that I've told you, it's from Oprah. The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude. I'd like to say her as well, but that's the way it was in the quote when I wrote it down. So that a person can change his or her future by merely changing his or her attitude. It's really, quote, that simple, unquote. Now, I realize that in a sense, simple is relative, um, because we keep saying, well, I could change things if. I could change things if. The problem is that you're looking at, in many cases, not always, but in many cases, if you listen to other people, it's how many times do they want something else or someone else to change? I would be perfectly happy if the weather were better. I would be perfectly happy if my boss would do this. I would be perfectly happy if my significant other, if my children picked up after their things, whatever. So many of the things that people say they would be happy if, or they would be more content, or something along that line, if. And it's dependent on what other people do. You can't change what other people do. There's no way you're going to be able to do that. If you could figure out how to do that, you could bottle it and write a book and make gobs of money, and everybody would come to your door, and then you'd probably be bothered because everybody was coming to your door. But we can't do anything with other people. All we can do is take care of what we think and what we do. And that's the bottom line. I mean, if you think about it, even those of you who do not have children, think in terms of a baby. This little itty bitty thing that maybe, yay big, depending, how old the baby is. And it eats, wets, cries, poops, sleeps, and that's about it. Doesn't do anything. But yet the human cannot control that infant. The infant basically controls what it's going to do and when it's going to do it. Decides when it's hungry, decides when it's, wet. It doesn't do anything. And if we can't control, say, 15 pounds of humanity that doesn't have many skills at doing anything, what makes you think you're going to be able to control anybody else? Or anything else for that matter? So we can't control other people or other things. So to try and rely on what other people to change so that we can be happy is just basically making your life miserable, because that's never going to happen. If you want control, you've got to recognize the fact that the only thing that you can control is you. And the only thing you can control is your attitude. Now, the next question is my attitude, what is my attitude? It makes a big deal of a difference. Okay, think in terms of a sibling, a friend, a coworker, whatever, somebody you get along with and you get along with well. Likelihood that that person enjoys something, not they, that person enjoys something that you don't like. Think about it. It's that thing, one thing. Let's just go with this. Just think of one thing. Maybe it's watching sports on TV. Maybe it's going to bed early. I don't care. One thing. That person enjoys it. You don't. It's not the thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's the way you look at that thing that makes a difference. I'm not telling you have to like that. I'm just getting you to recognize that the thing in question is not the issue. It's the attitude you have toward that thing. On the flip side, how many things do you like and other people look at you think, especially maybe some of you like really spicy foods, and other people look at you kind of like something's wrong. You've sort of, I don't know, whatever they look at you like. The spicy food is not the issue. The fact that you like it and somebody else doesn't, it just happens to be your particular makeup, what's, tasty to you, et cetera, et cetera. The thing, the spicy food, the pepper, whatever, is not the big deal. It's the attitude we have toward that thing. Okay? Now, if we stop to think about some of the things we may have liked or disliked, let's go with that. Disliked when we were children Maybe there was a particular food we didn't like, and now we love it. I'm going to guess there's at least one vegetarian out there that 20 or 30 years ago, or maybe when it was 6 or 7 years old, wouldn't like vegetables. You've changed. The attitude has changed. The vegetable didn't change, but you did. Your attitude, the way you look at it. On the flip side, maybe there was something that you loved when you were a kid that you don't like now. There could have been something you loved 10 years ago that you don't like now. Maybe, I don't know, there's a song or a piece of music or a piece of food that even 5 years ago that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy. And there's a difference now. It's our attitude and the way we look at things that make the biggest difference. So if you look at something and say, well, my life is miserable, it's never going to get better. Well, what do you expect to happen? If you start thinking in terms of, okay, my life is miserable today, but I've got the ability to do things, what can I do? And start looking forward to what you can do and getting to know different people and seeing what you can do to make that change, and that you've got the ability to make that change, you're going to make changes. As long as you look at things with the idea that you can't do anything because the world is doing it to you, nothing is going to happen. You become, a victim when everybody is doing something, when everything is doing something, when the walls are caving in on you and you feel as if everything's coming down on you, and you are making, in a sense, the world, because you're looking at it that way, as opposed to thinking, okay, what can I do about it and how can I change? Now, granted, at any given moment in time, you may not have a heck of a lot of options, but you still have the options. You still can start asking people for help or what they do or suggestions. And I know some of you don't like asking for help. That also has something to do with your attitude, because it's very difficult in this world to just get along without doing anything for anybody else or for having anybody help you. At this particular moment, given, say, some of the fires in Texas, those people are going to need to rely on each other. They can't get back on their feet by themselves. Well, maybe they can. But let's look at it this way. You've got one person who's going to get with a bunch of other people and they're going to work together to rebuild. And there's going to be somebody else who's going to decide, I can do it myself. Who do you think is going to be able to rebuild faster and get back on his or her feet faster? The person who's doing it all by himself or herself, or the person who's doing it with other people? Especially since the other people are pretty much in the same boat. Many of them anyway. It's with humans, if you think about it, really, if we all took the attitude that we only could do it by ourselves and we didn't need other people, we probably would never have gotten out of caves, and we probably would have died off as a species centuries ago. We still need to have other people to help us and do things. When you're farming or when you're doing anything else, you need people to help. So the same thing applies to you. If you may want to be able to do things, and I'm not saying that how do I say this? It's not that you can't do it by yourself, but you may need other people to give you suggestions or to coach you, for example. You still have to do it, but you might need some help for somebody to sit back and look at it and say, I think it might help if you did this, or what about this? Somebody could suggest and watch you and say, do you realize you're doing X? And you say, no, I didn't know that. And you start to change it. And it's like, oh, okay, this makes much more sense. Okay. Even if it's just getting suggestions, other people can be helpful for it. And so if you start looking in the terms that your attitude and the way you look at things, and even the attitude toward doing things by yourself, is really what's going to make the difference. If you look at where you've gotten on your own and where you've gotten when you've got other people to perhaps coach you, or at least to cheer you on, or to help you be accountable, even if all you do is get somebody to just remind you of what you promised to do and they keep you accountable for something, you may be doing all the work, but you need that outside help to keep reminding you that this is what you want to do. Try it sometime and think about it. If you really, really, really think about it, have you ever really done anything all by yourself without anybody's outside voice helping you along the line, without anybody telling you could do it? Probably not. If you can, write about it and tell me all about it, because I'd really like to discuss that with you. But I'd be willing to bet that none of you that are listening to me right now could have done everything, or anything for that matter, all by yourself without anybody's outside help. And if that's going to be the case, why not at least enjoy it and use it and ask for it to make life easier instead of making everything a big struggle for yourself? I hope this was helpful. And again, as I said, this is Oprah's quote, folks. If you know anything about Oprah, she managed to ask for help for a lot of people, and she's managed to do quite well for herself. So think about that. So if you've got any questions or comments or want to argue and debate this with me, hit reply and let me know and share it with somebody and get a good conversation going. See what you think that other people think about that. And if not, or until then, we will see you next week. Bye. Stay safe, by the way.